You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful.
Did you know that there are many deleted scenes in children's cartoons for the silliest reasons imaginable? Like in Bluey, an extremely educational and child-friendly show, but it had several scenes deleted. For example, there was an episode where Bluey and Bingo are video calling Muffin, their cousin, and there was a part that was completely cut. At a certain point early on, Trixie, Muffin's mom, says she has to let her sister Socks play too, and mentions she needs to go somewhere. Then we see Stripe, the girl's dad, asking for the phone back. But Muffin runs away from him until she enters the bathroom, and guess who's right there on the toilet? Trixie! So this extremely silly and fun scene was deemed inappropriate by Disney and was deleted, ending up like this. Skipping right to another scene.
Run, Muffin!
Dad!
Whoa, okay, there we go.
This is one of the 10 most ridiculous censored scenes in cartoons we're going to show you today. Pokemon Shurikens. If you've ever watched any anime, you probably know what shurikens are, those star-shaped weapons that Japanese ninjas use at times. And after many, many years, in one of the thousands of episodes of Pokemon XYZ, we see Ash, the show's protagonist, attempting to throw some shurikens at a target in the city he was visiting in that episode. I'll repeat, he was throwing shurikens at a target, not at people. However, many broadcasters still thought that could be too violent or even encourage kids to throw shurikens at each other, as if it were easy to find real shurikens out there. The fact is that remarkably, the show's editors found a way to replace real shurikens with pink shurikens with rubber suction cups. Seriously, this is one of the silliest censors of all time, you can be sure. SpongeBob SquarePants. Sandy. SpongeBob SquarePants is probably the most censored children's show in history, and the truth is that there are some good reasons for some scenes involving dangerous things to be removed, but other censorship is related to cultural aspects. One well-known case was the version of the show aired in Iran, where the only official religion is Islam. For this reason, some restrictions needed to be applied to the show before it could be broadcast on the country's networks. For example, in Persia, women should not expose parts of their bodies, which is why Sandy, the only non-human mammal living in Bikini Bottom, had to have her outfit altered. So far so good. The detail is that the dress design they put on Sandy ended up being somewhat poorly made and poorly drawn, which doesn't quite fit with a children's animated show. So the TV station in the country eventually re-released the same episodes with a different design of clothing for the character that looked better. Gravity Falls. Gnomes. Since we're talking about throwing things, let's talk about throwing creatures too, which ended up being censored. Gravity Falls is one of Disney's most enjoyable shows and has a legion of fans. That's a fact, but we can't deny that it has some creepy and dark elements, especially when it comes to certain characters like Bill Cipher and Gideon. And the episode that was censored is one where we have Gideon, a character who, if you're not familiar, is a little boy involved with dark magic. The funny thing is that the censorship has nothing to do with things like that. In the episode, we see Gideon taking over the Mystery Shack and hiring two tough-looking bodyguards to protect him. The detail is that Dipper and Mabel come up with a plan to take back the shack and enlist the help of gnomes to do so. And when the gnomes attack, they end up hitting the backs of the two bodyguards with their pointy hats, and they fall flat on their faces. This scene was completely deleted, jumping directly to the part where the gnomes break the fence. Another funny and entertaining cartoon censorship. Knick-Knack. You might not know this 1989 animation, but it exists. And more than that, it was Pixar's starting point for one of the greatest animation franchises in history, Toy Story. In this animated short, we see a snowman who wants to get out of his snow globe for a noble cause. A doll on the other side of the shelf who's always in a bikini, as if she's enjoying summer, named Sunny Miami. So, when it was re-released, the animation underwent a modification that Disney believed would create an unnecessary stereotype. They simply removed Sunny's breasts, making the doll look completely different. I guess if the pro-silicone movement stages a protest, they'll go back to the original version. If you've made it this far, you're definitely having fun with these super silly censored scenes, just like we are. So if you enjoy watching videos like this, comment #silly below. Bluey, Pony. And once again, we return to the small and adorable Bluey and her antics that some parents couldn't stand, leading them to call Disney and request the removal of entire episodes for the silliest reasons you can imagine. One of them, incredibly, involves one of the most unrelated things you'll see today. In one episode, we see Bluey and her friend Indy going to a fair in town and feeling like riding a pony. But they don't have enough money for both of them to ride, so Bluey asks to get down. And as soon as they do, the little pony poops right at that moment. The girls run away, making the scene quite funny. But for some reason, which we can't explain, the scene was completely cut, jumping straight to the girls panting after running. This was definitely a big goof.
You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful.
The Emperor's New Groove, Pebble. The movie that shows Emperor Kuzco turning into a llama after a cruel witch's spell became a cult phenomenon many years after its release. And if you haven't seen it yet, you can be sure it's a very funny Disney animation. Throughout the Emperor's journey, he gets help from Pacha to eventually return to normal. The problem is that the spoiled Emperor doesn't handle no very well, so at one point he throws a small pebble at Pacha's head. Believing that this was too dangerous, Disney decided that in subsequent editions of the movie, the pebble would be replaced with an acorn. The detail is that there are no acorns in the Amazon region where Kuzco's kingdom was located at that time, so it ends up being a somewhat senseless change this time. Pokemon Matches. This time, let's talk about the older version of Pokemon from 1997, the one that made the franchise a global success. In an episode where we see members of Team Rocket caught in a snowstorm, they have one thing that could keep them warm inside an igloo: matches. But in the United States, censorship determined that this would encourage children to light and hold matches, which would be too dangerous for them, so all the scenes where someone would be holding a match in this episode were cut. And in the only scene where it would be impossible to cut completely, Meowth is holding a candle instead of a match. This will remain the same until someone says that candle wax can also burn children. Gravity Falls. Hat symbol. Uncle Stan is definitely the most dishonest character in Gravity Falls, but this time we have to admit that this censorship related to him wasn't for that reason. On Stan's hat, there's a symbol of a fish that looks more like Pac-Man. It's a symbol of the order that Stan claims to be a part of, called the Order of the Holy Mackerel. And it seems like this society actually exists in the real world, but they didn't care about the, in quotes, tribute that was made to them, because almost no one knew them before that. The detail about Stan's hat symbol is that in some places, it was considered cultural appropriation. So, fish exist everywhere in the world, but fish symbols belong to specific places. Even the show's creator, Alex Hirsch, wrote a tweet at the time criticizing Disney's decision, which he considered baseless and also without a fish symbol. One Piece. Lollipop. One Piece certainly has a series of scenes that ended up being cut, deleted, or not even adapted from the manga because of excessive violence. But undoubtedly, many other things and details of the anime suffered completely unnecessary censorship. And the truth is that the early versions of the anime had many parts modified because it was believed they would be a bad influence on children. But without a doubt, the silliest of all was the adaptation made when they changed Sanji's cigarette for a kind of stick that often looked more like a lollipop, because it's very common for pirates to carry lollipops around, right? But in any case, it's always important to emphasize that smoking is very harmful to health. That's a fact, but sucking on lollipops isn't necessarily very good either, so the change ended up being quite silly in the end. Folks, those were definitely the 10 most ridiculous cartoon censorship scenes, and watching these scenes was quite fun, I have to admit. And since we know you want to keep having fun, we've picked 2 more excellent videos for you to enjoy right now. Choose one of the 2 and then leave a comment below letting us know what you thought of our suggestion. Have a great time!